Much like the character of Batman, we've had a ton of actors who have voiced and put on the cowl and the rubber suit in the live-action movies. But when it comes to Spider-Man movies, no other franchise compares. Starting with Tobey Maguire in 2002 Spider-Man, all the way to Miles Morales in the Across the Spider-Verse franchise. But the question is, which movie iteration of Spider-Man is the best? So let's find out and discuss. Here is my ranking of every Spider-Man movie. Number 10, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. The only thing I like about this film is the Spider-Man suit and the web swinging that we get in the first 5 minutes, which is incredible. I think most will agree that this is the definition of too many cooks in the kitchen, where studio execs made it impossible for this film to succeed with the 100 storylines and several comic book characters that never went anywhere. The moment where Jamie Foxx's teeth are fixed because of electric eels, that's where I was like, yeah, no. I will say though, Andrew Garfield has proven himself that he is an amazing Spider-Man / Peter Parker, but sadly, he had to do this movie. I know they had plans to do a third film where they were going to dive into Peter's grief of the loss of Gwen, then introduce the Sinister Six as the main villains, because clearly they didn't learn their lesson with the last film having too many villains. The Venom symbiote and Mary Jane would have been introduced even though they had casted Shailene Woodley and even filmed a bunch of scenes only to cut all of it. And to top it all off, saving the best for last, the third film would have possibly involved a resurrection serum to bring back Gwen and Captain Stacy. Ugh. But with how this film performed, plus the Sony hacks, the sequel was never gonna happen, on top of the 20 other horrible spin-offs they had planned. Overall, this film is just a mess, with Sony basically having their pants down. Get it? Because, you know, Rhino having his pants down. Ugh. Number 9, Spider-Man 3. Much like the problems with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3 was just as disappointing. You got way too many villains crammed into one film. The casting of Topher Grace as Eddie Brock / Venom is probably the worst casting, on top of any scenes with James Franco, and we cannot forget about this.
We don't really talk about this.
But I will say this film is a hell of a lot more bearable than Amazing Spider-Man 2. Thomas Hayden Church, who plays Sandman, was amazing casting, where I'll even go so far to say it's up to par with J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Alright, maybe that's a stretch.
No!
But out of those two, at least their casting and performances felt like they were taken right out from the comics. My biggest disappointment was the Venom design and Topher Grace casting. As a kid, I would watch the Spider-Man animated series religiously, where Eddie was like 200 pounds bigger, which made Venom tower over Spider-Man, where in this film, it just felt like I was watching two average-sized dudes fight each other. At least the Tom Hardy Venom films mostly got the design of Venom right. Sort of. I mean, yeah, I guess they are fun movies, but the fact you don't have Spider-Man at least even mentioned, it just kind of deflates those movies, in my opinion. And yes, before you start writing your comment, I know there are Venom comics that don't involve Spider-Man. I have a bunch of them. But after the disaster of this film, and the weird post-credit scene in No Way Home that literally went nowhere, fans including myself were hopeful we would finally get to see Tom Hardy's Venom and Tom Holland's Spider-Man fight each other on screen and get rid of the bad taste that is Spider-Man 3. Number 8, The Amazing Spider-Man. My feelings about this movie is meh. Don't get me wrong, this movie is a hell of a lot better than The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it has a lot of great Spider-Man moments. I don't really care for Andrew Garfield's sexy, emo skateboarder look though. But the one thing that both movies do really well is the chemistry between Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. I think it's the most believable on-screen romance than any other Spider-Man film, in my opinion. Then you got the library fight scene between the Lizard, which is one of my favorite Spider-Man fight scenes with the cameo from Stan Lee. Now I gotta say, this is a tiny little nitpick, but couldn't we make the Lizard look like the actual Lizard from the comics? Am I asking too much here? I get it, they wanted him to be able to emote, but he looks like a woman who's had way too much Botox and her nose fell off. And not to mention, he wears the lab coat for like a second. I guess Him wearing his lab coat with his name tag would have Peter probably figure it out a lot quicker. Ugh, all right, whatever, I'm done. Out of the two films in the Andrew Garfield franchise, this one is the most coherent, where this one actually has a pulse. Now, let's talk about the suit. I had put out a ranking video of all the Spider-Man suits, and to this day, this suit is probably the worst one. I hate the fabric, the mask, and the color. Ugh, they're just an eyesore. And I'm sorry, but out of all the suits, if you think this one is good, get your fucking eyes checked. But at least the sequel made one of my favorite suits, so that's something. Number 7, Spider-Man: Far From Home, aka Spider-Man National Lampoon European Trip. I really enjoyed Tom Holland's portrayal, and the fact that this movie isn't in New York like most of the MCU films, I really do enjoy. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio is great. I really enjoy the practical suit and the fact that he has a team behind him to make the illusions. The illusions are just spectacular throughout. But my biggest problem with every villain in the Tom Holland trilogy moving forward is that all of them don't originate from him. They're either created by Iron Man / Tony Stark. Mysterio is an ex-Stark employee, thus creating Mysterio because Tony named his invention Barf. I mean, can you blame him? Kinda glad he's dead. The fact that this movie was announced between Infinity War and Endgame, I feel like it really kind of dampened the scene where Peter got dusted. I just think it kind of deflated the impact of that scene. But again, if you got at least 2 brain cells, you knew Sony and Marvel weren't gonna just let him stay dead, where this film and No Way Home made over $1 billion in the box office. I mean, Spider-Man is one of the biggest properties in the superhero genre today. The one thing I gotta say was a dumb mistake on Tony Stark's part was giving Peter those glasses. Oh, you mean the glasses that can activate over 1,000 killer drones? And if in the wrong hands, aka giving them to a disgruntled Stark employee who is a complete psychopath, maybe you should have just shut them down. I mean, isn't this what he wanted to stop in the first film after finding out his weapons were being used for evil by terrorists? I don't know. Just food for thought. I didn't really care for the reveal that Nick Fury was a Skrull, cause that storyline clearly went nowhere. But I had a lot of laughs, and not to mention Jon Favreau is always a treat in these films. I love the fight scenes with Mysterio as he uses his illusions to mess with Peter, where they sprinkle in a lot of stills from the comics, and the third act of this film is probably one of my favorites. Oh yeah, Ralphie from A Christmas Story is reprising his role from the first Iron Man film. Thought that was kinda neat. Number 6, Spider-Man: Homecoming. After Tom Holland's Spider-Man was introduced in Captain America: Civil War, I was like, wow, they finally got the age and mannerisms right with this character who can actually physically do the flips in his own stunts. Having Peter be in high school that feels like a real high school, being surrounded by kids that actually look the age instead of looking like they're, 47 years old, was super refreshing. A lot of the film had a sort of a John Hughes vibe, and I just love the mix of weirdo kids sprinkled throughout, especially Ned. Now for the Tom Holland trilogy, this was definitely a great start. Much like James Gunn's DCU, they totally skip how he got his powers and then Uncle Ben dying cause great power comes with great bap 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 bap. I just like that he's already established. I love that the eyes are able to emote where Tobey and Andrews weren't able to do that. Seeing him actually being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and watching Peter try to juggle his personal life while also being a superhero really resembled the character from the comics. Plus, Michael Keaton's The Vulture is terrifying. Plus, you really feel for him, where he's not this mustache-twirling villain who is evil for the sake of being evil. He's just a hardworking guy trying to provide for his family and gets pushed to the edge when, again, that piece of shit, Tony Stark, comes and takes everybody's jobs away. And Michael Keaton's like, yeah, it's time for some crime.
Go. Do a crime.
After revisiting this film, I have a few nitpicks. I gotta say, Tony Stark is absolutely obnoxious in this film, where Peter keeps telling him like, hey, there's this guy selling alien technology, and instead Tony's like, yeah, whatever, and is drinking mimosas in India or whatever. I mean, okay, if Tony did listen to Peter the first time, the movie would have probably been over in 20 minutes. So I get it. But what killed me was hearing Tony tell Peter that if he can't be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man without his suit, then he doesn't deserve the suit. What the fuck do you mean? That's you! You think you could take on Thanos without your Iron Man suit? I think not! And yes, we get a glimpse of Tony in Iron Man 3 being able to use his intelligence to create little weapons and gadgets. But he couldn't even defeat Whiplash without his suit, and he's just some guy. Just ridiculous. I am happy though that in Spider-Man Brand New Day, we are wiping the slate clean, having him just be in this practical suit with no kill mode setting, and finally stepping away from him being Tony Stark Jr.